Just to give you some background about why we're recording you. We did have some providers who have asked that if they couldn't attend, that they might be able to see the minutes or, learn the information that was discussed during the provider meeting. And so we're going to try to start recording these and putting them on the portal. So if you wanted to go back and check something, or you wanted somebody else to view that, we're going to figure out exactly where that goes, and then we'll get that information out to you so that it'll be an easy place to just refer back to. We're hoping to kind of put it on the same page where all the minutes and PowerPoints and everything are from those existing dates. So that's why we're taking your picture this morning. And like I said, for those of you who can't see everything, you're only hearing via phone, we will get all this information sent out because Rachel's putting some good links in the chat as well, just so that we can make sure that everybody has access to all of those.
And I hate to interfere because I know you got a lot on your agenda, but we've got some new faces today. I'm excited to see Elise, who's a new ISC, and Christy Patrick, who very seldom come, and JP's down there. But I wondered if it would be something that, because we haven't done this in a provider meeting in a long time, maybe just introduce ourselves, pass it off to someone so we know who, because it's hard during Zoom, I know. But like for everybody, I'm Kyle Miller. I'm the director of the Provider and Community Resource Department. I'm glad you're here. I'm excited about this being our first meeting for the year, and it's going to be a great year, and good things are going to happen. And I'm going to pass it over to Kristen Thorne. Unmute.
I'm coming. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kristen Thorne, and I'm the Provider Resource Specialist for the county. And I want to thank you for all being here today. This is our first meeting for 2022. We have a lot of great information to share with all of you today. And again, at any time, if you have questions, please just add the chat, and we'll make sure that the presenter is able to answer questions for you. So we'll go ahead and get started. Today we have Lisa Ryan, and she is with the Office of System Supports and Standards, and she'll be going over a Medicaid review. And then we will have our very own Ann Mikan towards the end of the morning, and she's going to go over the annual training requirements. This is new to everyone, and she's got a lot of great information. So thank you both for being here, and welcome.
So you're going to pass it to Ann, so then she can pass to the next.
Yep, I'll pass it on.
Right.
My name is Ann Mikan. You probably get emails from me sometimes. I'm the professional development coordinator at the board, and we're excited to have you all here. It's crazy to think that it's February next week already, until you walk outside and then you're like, oh yeah, it's January in Ohio. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Debbie Howard if you just want to say hi and who you are. Hang on, you're still muted.
Hello, I'm Debbie Howard. I'm an independent provider.
And then if you can pick a name, any name, we'll throw the gauntlet to the next person.
Oh, I see Tamara Johnson there. Hi, Tamara.
Hi, Debbie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Good to see you on here.
You too. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
That was Tamara Johnson from Learning Never Ends, and she's passing it over to Kiara Mason.
Yes. I am Kiara Mason. I'm with Learning Never Ends. I'm so excited to kind of be back on the meeting. We were on a little hiatus. It's been crazy at the program, but I'm glad to be back. So I will pass it over to Teresa.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Teresa Ryan from DODD. I'm the one that's going to be doing your fraud presentation this morning. Jamie.
Okay, there you
Yep.
go.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jamie Rigsby from the County Board, the Community Support Specialist. It's really great to see everybody. Rachel, you're up.
Given his status as a deserter,
sorry, I thought I was already up. I'm Rachel McCoy, Community Connections Coordinator for the Board of DD. Ooh, I was supposed to pass it, wasn't I? Okay, sorry. How about Kelly?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kelly Bauman with the Salvation Army Samaritan Center for Adult Care, and I'm passing this on to Sarah.
Good morning. I'm Sarah Britch. I am the nurse here at Fairfield Center for Disabilities and working as a co-coordinator also, and I'll pass it to Tracy.
Hi, I would be Tracy, co-coordinator at Fairfield Center for Disabilities and DSP at Fairfield Center for Disabilities. And I will pass it to Kim.
Good morning, I'm Kim Conrad. I think I'm the only Kim, I'm not sure. I am a residential provider in Fairfield County. Westside Support Services, our agency, and I will pass this over to Courtney.
Hi, I'm Courtney Ogg. I'm Director of Community Assisted Living in Fairfield County. I guess I will pass it on to JP.
Good morning. I'm JP Schultz. I'm the behavior support technician for the county board, so I could be in homes working with staff directly. And I'm going to send this on over to Hunter.
Hi, I'm Hunter Haynes. I am the Associate Site Director for Learning Never Ends Fairfield. I will pass it on to Allison if she hasn't gone yet.
Hi, I'm Allison Woodside. I'm from Fairfield County Board. I do behavior support. I've lost track of who's gone, who's not gone. Elise.
Hi guys, I'm Elise. I am an ISBA. I support Susan Burnett's team. We have transitional ages, so might see a few emails from me. And I'll pass it over to Kate.
Hi there, I am Kate McAndrews. I am with First Choice Family Services, marketing coordinator there, and happy to be here. I think I need to pass it to maybe Brandon.
Hey y'all, my name is Brandon and I work at a company called Dose Health. We have the smart pillbox that is approved through the DODD waiver. So happy to be here and help with any assistive technology questions or med management questions. I will pass it to Kurt.
Hi, I'm Kurt. I'm an independent provider.
Christy Patrick, pick it up and run with it.
Okay, sorry, I'm a little under the weather today. I am Christy Patrick. I am an individual budget coordinator, and I work in the resource management department here at the county board. So Jeff Smeltzer.
Thanks. I'm Jeff Smeltzer. I'm an ISC, adult ISC with Fairfield DD. And I will pass it to Amy B.
Hi, I don't have my camera on right now because I'm with a client, but I am an independent provider and just wanted to say that's about it. I'll pass it to Casey Holly.
Hi, I'm Casey Holly. I also don't have my camera on because I'm working. I'm an independent provider in Fairfield County, and I will pass it on to, has Leslie gone yet?
No, I haven't. Hi, I'm Leslie Dancho, and I am the Community Support Manager here for the County Board. I apologize. We're having work done on our house today, so that's why my camera's off. But I was trying to look and see who all is left. Kyle, do you know who's remaining?
Brian or Richard?
Hey, Brian here from Mom's Meals. Can you guys see me? Got my camera. It's been malfunctioning lately, so hopefully you guys could hear and see me on the other end, but representing home delivered meals. Mom's Meals delivers to all those counties. So yep, representing them. I'm not sure who to pass it to. What about Richard?
Good.
Hi, my name is Richard Dennis, independent provider. I'm at work right now. That's why my camera is not on.
I see Marie Deshay Hooper, who hasn't spoken up yet.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, everybody. I'm Marie. I'm with Sojourn Residential Living Adult Daycare in Reynoldsburg, Ohio. And we are saying happy Wednesday to everybody. And I'm going to pass it to, I'm taking a guess here, Miss Amy Bean. Has she gone yet?
Yeah.
She went already?
I think we're at
Okay.
a point when if somebody hasn't gone, you're gonna have to just have to speak up.
Oh, okay.
Darlene hasn't gone.
I haven't gone yet.
Okay, I'm Darlene
Passing it to
Stolper.
you.
I'm an independent provider for money management. And I was trying to catch up. Every time I picked a name, somebody would take it right after me. So I'm not sure who's left yet. Kathy Tate. Me. Okay, Kathy Tate.
Hi, I'm Kathy Tate. I'm an independent provider. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Kathy Tate, independent provider.
We have a
Anyone
couple
else?
folks on phone as well. And actually one of them is a 614 number. If you could let us know who you are, so that I can make sure you get your certificate, that would be great.
I think it's, I have it with Shanae Allen Valentine. I'm an independent provider.
Great, thank you.
Hello, I'm Jewel Johnson, Director of Titus House Incorporated, and I'm on the phone because I'm doing site visits today.
Thanks so much, Jewel. I think we also have Sarah and Teresa, who are independent providers for our county as well on the phone. Is there anybody else that we missed?
Did Brian go?
I did. Brian again from Mom's Meals.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
my
remember.
camera
Thank
was
you.
on and off. I'm trying to just spare you that distorted image that might come through, but yeah, I'm here. I went.
I really like that excuse though, Brian. I'm gonna use that from now. Something's wrong with my camera, so I'm just gonna have to shut it. I think that's great.
No, it's brutal.
Mhm.
Believe me, I don't want you guys looking at me and pointing jokes and freezing the screen. It's already on recording, so I don't need any drawings on there too.
So thanks, everybody. I know that was a little bit challenging just because we're all, it's kind of hard. Everybody's square is a little bit different place on everybody's screen, but it's just, it's been since November since we've had a provider meeting. And so just kind of wanted to get us back in the swing of things. Glad you're all here. Good to see some ISCs, ISC assistants, JP and the behavior, and Allison, I'm glad you guys are here too. But of course, this is for the providers, so we're really glad you're here. So just thanks for going through that little agonizing experiment there. And I'm going to pass it back to Ann. And just want to let you know how pleased we are you're here. Thanks.
All right, well, we're actually going to go ahead and get started with our first presenter. So and I think we got her screen. She's right side up now, which is exciting as well. And you should be good to go ahead and share your screen, Teresa, whenever you're ready.
So can you see the screen?
We do not yet. We see you.
I forgot to click share.
There we go. Yay.
Okay, so you can see the Medicaid fraud?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, thank you, everybody. I'm very happy to be here, very happy to be participating in this training with you all. And of course, I was asked to come and present on Medicaid fraud. Now, I know the audience is mixed. I know that we have some county board representatives and providers. This training that I developed, even though we have across the gamut different types of training, this is geared more towards providers. So county board representatives, if you have specific questions, please let me know as we go through. I will try to throw some things in throughout the presentation that may be pertinent to, the function of a county board, but just know that this is primarily targeted towards providers. So the agenda is kind of, the training includes kind of an overview of what is Medicaid fraud, because I know that we use that term and we want to make sure that you're really clear about what Medicaid fraud is. The second thing we're going to talk about is transparency. There's a lot of people out there, a lot of county boards that are like, oh, no, we don't want to talk to our providers about Medicaid fraud because, you know, that kind of sets up a bad tone with them. That's kind of sets up a bad vibe with them. And so we want to let you all know that that is not the intent of doing Medicaid fraud training. It's about educating. It's about making sure you understand what you can and can't do and how to keep yourself out of trouble, basically. We're going to talk a little bit about county board billing audits and what those typically look like, provider billing audits, lasting results and impact, and then the DODD fraud referral process. Again, I can't stress this enough. I want to be completely transparent about the entire process, what it looks like, what county boards are looking for, what the state's looking for, what, you know, when we come out there to conduct compliance reviews, how that can result in a red flag for Medicaid fraud. So I just want to be completely transparent across the board. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about what Medicaid fraud actually is. So if you go to Ohio Revised Code 291340, there's the definition. It's really plain and clear about what specifically Medicaid fraud is. And I'm going to read it. I don't like to read slides to people, but I want to make sure you hear it. No person shall knowingly make or cause to be made a false or misleading statement or representation for use in obtaining reimbursement from the medical assistance program. It's pretty clear language, but there's more to it than just that statement. That statement is talking about intent. That means that you knowingly and intentionally defrauded the Medicaid program. That's the bottom line. And we're going to talk about that intent later on, but it is about intent, about the intent. And then we have Ohio Revised Code 290334, which further supports this. No person who owns, operates, or administers, or who is an agent or employee of a care facility shall do any of the following: commit abuse against a resident or a patient of a facility, commit gross neglect against a resident or a patient of a facility, or commit neglect against a resident or a patient of a facility. This part, this B, Ohio Revised Code 2903, is talking about the ICF facilities. And it is an arm, it is an extension of the Attorney General's Office Abuse and Neglect Unit that handles this B for ICFs. So kind of a little bit of history about how the Medicaid program came about, how the fraud unit came about. So we had the Social Security Act of 1965 that came out, and Title 18 and 19 under the Social Security Act created the Medicare and Medicaid programs. In 1977, when fraud started to become a thing with Medicaid and Medicare, they developed the Abuse Amendment to Title 19 to create a Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. The Medicaid Fraud Control Unit is national. They have branches in every state, and it consists, you know, we'll get into who it consists of down in bullet point 4, but it usually has supervisors, investigative agents, support staff, etc. Under Ohio Revised Code 10985, that's what gives the Ohio Attorney General's Office criminal jurisdiction to prosecute Medicaid fraud cases. So typically Medicaid fraud is not processed. It's not in a local criminal jurisdiction, although we do see some cases prosecuted at the local level. Most of the time it's prosecuted at the state level, which is out of Franklin County for all 88 counties. Our current Medicaid unit has approximately 101 staff. They have more than 75 agents and supervisors. We have 15 AAGs and 18 support staff. So the stat numbers, I didn't put the stats in there from 2020 or 2021 because of COVID. Most of the courts were closed down during that period of time. And if the courts weren't closed, they were processing very few cases, to include Medicaid fraud. So the stats from 2019, there were approximately 1,000 complaints that came into the AAG's office. That 1,000 complaints resulted in 137 indictments, with 134 out of the 137 cases resulting in conviction. And then in the 5 years prior to 2019, they recouped approximately $300 million. So it shows you that our Ohio Medicaid Mufuku unit is very good at what they do in recouping money. They build their cases. They usually have solid referrals because of the briskness and the robustness of how we do our referrals, especially through DODD. So we have the nation's fifth largest Medicaid program. Ohio does. We have about 28 billion in Ohio. We spend about $50 million per minute, or $50,000 per minute on Medicaid in Ohio, which results in 1 out of every 4 people being involved in some way, shape, or form in the Medicaid program. And it's about $500 billion nationally. So that's kind of the backstory. The reason why I wanted you all to know the backstory is because there usually isn't a good understanding of what the Medicaid program is, how the enforcement is there with Medicaid, who actually enforces it. A lot of providers are under the misunderstanding that it's an action taken by DODD, when in fact it's not. It's actually the Ohio Department of Medicaid that takes this action, and the representation for that is the Ohio Attorney General's office. So here's an example of what might be considered a Medicaid fraud case. I put this in here because I just want to have a brief conversation about it. So if I was receiving a referral and I was looking at this, and I see this referral indicating a provider is billing for services not rendered, the SSA at the county board may contact the consumer and verify this information. So they might, either I could receive it or the county board might receive a complaint like that. And it's about verifying. So they may reach out to the individual and say, hey, is your provider showing up when they're supposed to? Are they providing you services? And then depending on the answer from that may lead 2 different directions. What it's not part of is the SSA contacting the provider and interrogating them over the phone. Okay, so that end part of it is not something that should happen. The SSA may reach out to the provider and say, can I see your timesheets for providing services to these individuals? Can I see your documentation? But it's not about interrogating them. So that first one is, the first part of it is considered a fraud. The second part of it, not so much, because we're not going to do that. The next thing that it talks about is this thing down here about reversing claims. I cannot stress this enough to county board employees. You should never, ever, ever be reaching out to a provider and asking them to reverse billing or to change billing. That could potentially be a fraud case. If you're not sure about your request, about your attempt to request a provider to change billing, please consult with DODD before doing so. Providers, if you're the one that identifies, oh my goodness, I've made a mistake, I need to correct this billing, that's on you. You can get in and correct billing. Just because you've made a mistake does not equate to fraud. So I want to be really clear about that. So providers, you need to be making sure that you're watching over that billing, and that you're making sure that if you're billing or if somebody's billing on behalf of you, that the hours that you actually worked are what's being billed. Okay. And I'll say that again, the hours that you've worked. Please do not send a ISP over to a billing agent and tell them to bill based on what was authorized for you. That's not permitted. Because your billing agent should be confirming that those hours were actually worked. And that's the only thing you're entitled to bill is for the hours you actually worked. Okay, so at the beginning, I talked about transparency and what transparency is. So why do we conduct these trainings with providers? There's a very basic reason why we conduct these these trainings with providers. We want you to know what Medicaid fraud is. We want you to know what it looks like. We want you to know what county boards are looking for. We want you to know what the state's looking for. We want you to know what the Medicaid program expects the county boards and the state to be doing about protecting the integrity of the Medicaid program. And part of that protecting the integrity is ensuring that we don't have people stealing Medicaid money. So the trainings are conducted to educate you, to give you knowledge, to make sure you understand what you're doing, to make sure you understand that, you know, when you decide to provide services to somebody, you've actually entered into a contract and this is what you're responsible for. So that's the reason why we conduct these trainings. And there's benefits to you. Benefits to the providers are you have knowledge now, you know what's expected. You know the proper way to bill, you know the proper way to ask for increase in services and making sure that, you know, you don't do anything until you get an authorized pause so that you're not putting stuff in there. You understand that just because you're given, you know, 60 units in a span doesn't mean that you're entitled to that. You actually have to work it. Benefits to the county board. It benefits the county board in a number of ways. These providers, provider trainings, county board trainings, any type of trainings related to fraud benefits the county board because it provides education to the county board and knowledge about what's going on with fraud, how, you know, what we're looking at, what we're supposed to be looking at, what's fraud, what's not fraud. But there's also benefits to the county board in relation to their constituents in their county. You know, county boards have levies that get passed, and those levies are passed based on the county, the constituents who live in that area, and the stakeholders who are in that area. The belief in the county board and the systems and the programs and everything that they provide support for individuals with DD. And this is just another thing that county boards can put in their package to stakeholders, to their constituents to say, we do look for fraud. And if we suspect it, or we think that somebody's committing fraud in our county, we are going to send that up and we're going to go after that person and recoup the money, because county boards have to pay a match for services in their county. And so it is not only a loss to the federal Medicaid program, there's a loss to the state and there's a loss to the county. And so that money needs to be recouped. So that's why there's benefit in all realms to doing Medicaid fraud training. Okay, so I want to have a little bit of interaction, and let me see if I can see the chat here. Okay, I can see the chat. Or if Jamie, if you wouldn't mind telling me what people say, that's fine too. So I want to know from you guys, the first one here, a consumer reports the provider works from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. The provider documents working from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m., which is what's on the ISP. The consumer reports provider works her hours, but provider does not document services. And the consumer reports the provider works from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., but the provider documents bills and is paid for working 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. So this is kind of one provider who's doing a few different things. Does this look like Medicaid fraud to anybody? I want to know, just based on the information that I've already given you thus far, would anybody think this is Medicaid fraud or not Medicaid fraud? What's that?
Feel free to unmute if you want to and shout out your answer or stick it in the chat.
Yes.
Yes, I would.
I would, just because the consumer and the provider's information are not 100% matching.
I would say it would, because the hours aren't matching, and not documenting services, it would pretty much show that those, I mean, to me anyway, it's showing that services weren't completed to bill for those services.
Absolutely.
Right. So you guys are on the right track, right? The hours are not matching up. So, on one day, they're documenting they're working from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. The provider works from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., but on the documentation sheets, they put 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Those hours don't match. That's what's in the ISP. That's what the ISP says, 12 p.m. to 4 p.m., but they're not working enough hours to cover that. So they're getting extra. So they're getting extra. No, they're not. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The first one, the time matches. Okay. So that part of that, I thought I changed that. That part of that does match. So that is not an issue. The second part of this, the consumer provides work, or provider works her hours, but does not document the services. Documentation is a federal requirement for being able to bill and be reimbursed for services. However, not having documentation for a particular service does not equal fraud in and of itself. Will you be subject to a payback under ORC, under the state of Ohio? Yes, because our rules are exactly the same as the federal rules. You must have documentation to evidence that service. And if you don't have it, you could be subject to a payback. So it is still important to document. We're not saying that you get out of documentation, but it doesn't equal fraud. The last example here, 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. versus 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. The times, the times don't match. So that could be considered potential fraud. So again, please don't necessarily just look at the ISP. You do most of the time have flexibility unless there is a specific reason why you're working specific hours. There is some flexibility in the times that you work a day. But I would strongly encourage you to involve the team if you're working different hours from what has been put in an ISP for any reason. Like I said, if the hours are the same, 4 hours is 4 hours, but you still want to make sure that the county board is aware that you've worked some off shifts for whatever reason. Okay. Okay, for some reason. All right, here we go. So county board billing audits. This is related to this previous screen that we just talked about. So county boards can initiate billing audits for whatever reason they want. They can be doing it randomly, just looking for errors in billing or things that jump out at them, or they could be doing a targeted audit specifically with your billing audit, your billing submissions, to see if there's any irregularities with billing. So what they actually are is what you've submitted to be paid for. So they can go in the system and, you know, look at the ISP, look at what was authorized, look at the times that, you know, you said you were going to be working, the amount of hours, and then compare that to what you billed. And if they have any questions that jump out at them, they would be doing follow-up. As I said, it could be scheduled. County boards, we have some county boards that do regular audits on a schedule. We have some of them that do random audits. It doesn't have to be, you know, we don't tell the county boards when to audit. This is all done on their own to protect the money that they match for the state waivers. So some of the outcomes of these billing audits, sometimes they could be conducting a billing audit and they see that you were supposed to be billing, you know, let's say it's non-medical transportation, and you were supposed to be billing per trip, and you've submitted billing per mile. That shouldn't be going through, but sometimes it does. And if they pick that up, is it necessarily fraud? No, because you really did provide the service, but this could be an outcome that could relate or could be turned over as an education. So they may be contacting you and saying, okay, we need to do some education with you about the proper billing per trip versus per mile, what the difference is, you know, and make you go in and kind of reverse those per trip billings that you put in there or per mile billings and bill it per trip. So there is some leeway to have providers correct billing, but it's not a lot of leeway. But that could be an example where it's not fraud, the service was provided, it was an incorrect billing, and they're just going, you're going in and reversing it out to put it back in the other way. All right, so I want to do a check-in. Everybody following me so far? Anybody have any questions?
I was going to ask, so like for that scenario.
Oh, hold on, Hunter. We heard you and then muted.
Am I good now?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to ask for that scenario. So, you know, for billing for the mileage instead of for the trip, what if they were going extra miles on purpose for that trip and billing for those extra miles? Would that be considered the Medicaid fraud?
We're going to hit that. So if you hold that question, we're going to hit it in another scenario we're going to talk about.
Gotcha.
Or, you know, down the road, we will be talking about miles because that seems to be a big issue. It has been a big issue during the pandemic. And so we can have some more conversation about that. So if you hold on, Hunter, we'll get to that.
Gotcha.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. So here we go. Here's another example. When conducting a compliance review and looking at service documentation, it's evident that the provider is billing for 8 hours per day on Fridays and Sundays. But according to the documentation, she's working 8 hours per day on Thursdays and Saturdays. Would that be a fraud issue or possibly an audit issue?
Yeah, so wouldn't it be an audit?
Audit.
I was going to say an audit issue.
Yeah. Why?
I'm thinking because they're billing the same hours, but they're accidentally maybe billing, you know, putting the documentation on the wrong days or accidentally billing on the wrong days.
Yeah, it could be any of those things. So the service was provided, obviously. You know, the county board can get confirmation that yes, the service was really provided. So there might be something going on with this individual that the ISP is saying the services are supposed to be Fridays and Sundays, and they're working Thursdays and Saturdays. And that would be a conversation that I would encourage a county board to have with an individual. you know, are these days being changed because the individual has requested it or the family guardian has requested it? Hopefully it's not being changed for the convenience of a provider, but it still falls in that audit realm, just to kind of educate the person that if they're going to switch days, like we talked about earlier, that's probably a team discussion, because that's not the contract that was signed, the ISP being the contract, because you said you would provide services on Friday and Sunday, and now we're doing Thursday and Saturday. So again, you would go back to your team and have that conversation and make sure everybody's aware. Maybe it's only a temporary thing. Maybe it's just because, you know, the individual lives with parents and their schedule changed. So it's about keeping the team informed, and the team lead is the county board, SSA. Okay, family member reports that the provider is billing for services they have not rendered. Is that a fraud or is that audit?
Fraud.
Fraud. Yeah, I see it popping up in the chat. Everybody's saying fraud. Yeah, you're correct. I keep stressing this. If you're billing for a service you have not provided, that is straight up fraud. And I'm speaking to the providers when I tell you this. I cannot tell you how many cases I have been involved with where a provider has thought that they have such a great relationship with this individual or this family member that they could never get in trouble for it. And lo and behold, the individual or the family gets tired of the provider not showing up, and then they ultimately contact the county board, because these individuals are deemed and assessed to need services, and you have agreed to provide those services. So please don't think that an individual or a provider or a guardian would never contact the county board and tell them that you're not showing up or that you're not providing the hours as specified in the plans, because they will. Eventually, they will. Another thing I need to tell you all and be completely transparent about is we have a lot of family members out there who are very OCD about the schedules for the individuals that they are guardians for. They keep calendars, they keep notes. And so when a fraud referral is in the process, they will go back to those family members and take copies of the calendars, of the notes, of the text messages that you've sent and said you weren't coming. They will turn all of that stuff over to the county board, and then ultimately it will get turned over to the AG's office. So again, you know, please don't submit billing for the times that you are not working. And if you're using a billing agent, again, do not have them submit billing, because that's also not a defense. Don't have them submit billing based on what was authorized in the ISP. You need to be very clear with a billing agent and set up some type of process where you're verifying the times that they're billing, or you're at least reviewing it before it's submitted. Okay, fraud or audit. An agency calls to self-report that a staff member was fraudulently filling out timesheets and the agency billed for those hours. The agency wants to adjust and reverse the claims and take ownership of the mistake. Is that fraud or is that an audit?
Be an audit.
Who else has an opinion? Fraud or audit?
It would be a fraud, but then an audit after.
I would say fraud on the consumer, audit on the agency.
Okay, for those of you who said fraud, what are you thinking? Why is it fraud?
Because it was already billed.
Okay.
The intent of the staff. They know.
Yeah, the staff turned in the actual units. The
Yep.
agency just billed for it and caught it.
Yeah. Okay. So you're right. It is fraud. Now, if a county board ever gets this type of phone call from an agency, and all the agencies that are on the call, listen up, okay? Please don't reverse the billing. County boards, please don't tell them to reverse the billing. They need to leave the billing submitted. They need to leave it paid. What will happen is a fraud referral will be made, but that fraud referral goes under the staff's name, not the agency. The fraud case is not opened up against an agency. It's opened up against the staff person who committed the fraud. And I know we have a lot of agencies who are very leery about bringing this to anybody's attention because they're afraid that somehow their agency's name is going to get tarnished because a staff member has done this. And that is not the case. It's not the agency, it is the staff person. And the Attorney General's office will work with the agency to get everything corrected as the investigation or as the indictment and conviction down the line happens. They will take care of that part of the claim. You don't have to worry about that part. You just need to go on, let the county board know that you've identified this. Let the county board do what they need to do, which is to file the fraud referral with me and just move on as if nothing has happened. You do what you need to do with that staff because you can fire the staff. It doesn't matter. But the fact of the matter is this needs to be brought to the attention of the state because it is fraud. They caused you to intentionally defraud the Medicaid system, and they need to be held accountable for that. So when you come across that, you should be reporting it to the county board. Any questions from any agencies about that? Okay, we'll move on.
Excuse me, Teresa, before you move on, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I heard you say for the agencies, you're absolutely follow your policies, fire that person. How do we prevent that person from jumping to another county and going to work for another provider when we know this person's under investigation?
Well, you really can't. I mean, if they call for a reference, you guys can say whatever you want. I mean, we don't tell you what to say. I mean, you can tell the next agency whatever, but rest assured, if this is clear fraud, the Attorney General's office will get them and file the indictment. And they ultimately, if they're convicted, they won't be working for another agency. They will be permanently excluded from being able to work at any Medicaid reimbursed provider. Anything that's reimbursed through Medicaid, they won't be able to work.
But there will be a time frame that they run the risk, or I mean, we would all run the risk of that person jumping to another agency doing the same thing.
Yep. And I know that I deal with county boards all the time that just absolutely go crazy when they have to let a provider continue to bill for services that they haven't provided. And we have agencies that have made this type of referral and they know this person is working for another agency doing the same thing, and it makes them crazy that they're getting away with it. But I want you guys to understand, they will be caught. The referral is in, the Attorney General's office has it, and they will ultimately be caught and stopped. But it is not up to us to be running around telling people that, a fraud investigation, that you turn them in for fraud and, any of that kind of stuff, because we want them to continue to do this because it proves that the AG's case to show that, they did this at your agency when you reported it, and now they may be doing it at the next agency. It just gives them more of a case to settle and more of a, more meat to them being able to stop them from doing it in the future. I know it's hard. It's very hard. But we have to let them continue until the
Courtney,
case. Go ahead.
Courtney asked, so why would they be listed on the Medicaid exclusion list then?
We're going to talk about that shortly. I'll get to that.
And
That's
then-
part of this presentation.
Average timeline to reach a conviction?
So our Attorney General's office, as you can imagine, is overwhelmed with cases. We have noticed prior to COVID, our cases were getting handled a lot quicker. And then of course, COVID put kind of the screeching brakes on everything. Now they're trying to pick up cases that essentially had to be stopped because the Attorney Generals, the investigative agents were not allowed to go out to the field. They were not allowed to be conducting surveillance and all of the other stuff that they normally would do in their jobs. They weren't allowed to go out to conduct interviews and observations. They weren't allowed to do any of that stuff during COVID. They actually just got the green light to go back to work. I think it was in July of last year. And the field agents got to return to the field in September of 2021. So they're playing catch up with cases that were submitted in 2019 and up until that point in 2021. So, you know, they're taking a little bit longer now. I would say a year, maybe 6 months to a year is what they're working on now. But once they get caught back up, it should be under 6 months. But sometimes it just depends on the case, you know, and in the amount of time it takes. But like I said, I know they hired more agents. They have less of a caseload than they had before the pandemic, but they're still backlogged, to be honest. Okay, moving on. So some county board responsibilities, just so providers know. If they receive a potential referral, likely they're going to be discussing it with the supervisor or whoever their point person is at the county board for fraud referrals. And then from there, the county board will follow whatever internal process they developed. That internal process involves, you know, gathering their information, filling out the fraud referral form and sending it up to the state, which is me. They'll gather any and all supporting documentation. Like I talked about earlier, if you've sent text messages to the individual, the provider, they'll get those. They'll get calendars, they'll get documentation, phone calls, TCM records. I mean, anything that they have that shows how the fraud was committed, they'll submit. But as I said before, the county board will not be discussing the fraud referral with anyone, including you, the provider, the staff, the individual, or family members. They don't, once a fraud referral is made, that should not be shared with anybody. Nobody should be talking about that fraud referral, except for those people who are involved directly at the county board with fraud referrals, and that's part of their caseload that they follow those along. Because ultimately the Attorney General's office will have the county board involved, and you as the provider somewhere down the road will know that you're under investigation. The county boards, these are the things that county boards are not responsible for. They're not responsible for contacting providers directly. So please do not call and yell and scream at the county board if ultimately an investigative agent shows up at your door and tells you that they're there to conduct an investigation. It's not the county board's responsibility to tell you, nor should they be telling you. So it's not their fault. They're following the state's directive of what to do. The county boards also don't do the investigation of the allegation of potential fraud. That is not their function. That is not my function. It's not DODD's function. That function to investigate belongs to the Attorney General's office. They are the only ones who have criminal jurisdiction to conduct a fraud investigation. County boards also do not contact the AG's office directly. They wait for the AG's office to contact them when there's an investigation going on. The referrals come to me, they're vetted through my office, and then I present them to a committee, and the Attorney General's office decides whether they're going to take the case or not. And then the other thing, again, as I said, the county boards are not responsible for discussing the allegation with others. So there's no blame with county boards because they didn't tell the individual, or they didn't tell the guardian, or they didn't tell the staff. They have nothing to do with that. They're actually not permitted to do any of this stuff. Okay. So proactive measures for providers. So what can you do as a provider? Again, attend trainings. Not only this type of training, but any and all trainings that are open to you related to billing and documentation. Make sure if you hear of new trainings that just because you took one billing training, please don't think that you know it and you understand it and that's the end of it. You know, if there's new trainings that come out for billing, please attend them, because there might be new information that you learn. There might be new ways to do things that you'll learn about through those billing trainings. So whether they're offered at the county board or the state level, if you haven't attended them before, please attend them, because billing is the number one thing that leads to the fraud, is that billing piece. Address concerns with county board with the county boards as they're identified and seek clarification when needed. So if a county board is calling you and saying, hey, you know, like we talked about with non-medical, you bill per trip or you bill per mile, but you were supposed to bill per trip, don't ignore them. Make sure you get back to the county board and you get that situation handled. Because if you don't ultimately correct that billing, they may have no choice but to take it further. And we may be directed by our legal to take it for a fraud referral. Because now you know that you weren't entitled to that per mile and you have not corrected it after being told multiple times that something needs to be done because you actually took Medicaid money that did not belong to you. Okay, so don't ignore the county board when they're trying to reach out to you for information. And then if there's something that you don't understand, if there's some billing that you don't understand, the ratios are a big one. If you don't understand how to clearly bill the ratios, make sure you seek clarification with the county board, especially, you know, some providers get kind of into some trouble, a little bit of trouble when, you know, they're providing services to more than one person and then a situation comes up and you have to go pick up that other individual. And now you have two individuals with you, and then you turn around and bill one-to-one. You can't bill one-to-one if both of them are there. Okay, so those are things that you need to seek clarification from the county board. How do I do this billing? How do I, you know, account for this? This was an emergency, and work with the county board on that. You can consult with the county board by bringing your documentation. At just about every county board or every county board has somebody there that does provider support. So if you're not sure about documentation, you're not sure about what your responsibilities are. If you're an HPC provider versus shared living, very different documentation requirements. Go to the county board for help and ask them. Ask them to look at your documents, make sure that they're correct. Pay attention. Make sure that you all are subscribed to the different newsletters and information things that come out, not only from your local county board, but from the state. It's really important. You know, they let you know when new rules are coming out, when changes are happening with billing, when, you know, new waivers are being discussed, just so you have all of that information. Because if you find yourself in a situation with a fraud case, telling an investigative agent at the Attorney General's office, I didn't know, is not a defense. Because as a provider, whether you're independent or an agency provider, you're required to sign multiple attestations, not only when you sign up to become a provider, but every time you recertify. And all of those attestations say that you will be current and know all the rules and all of your responsibilities as a provider, as a Medicaid provider. You also have a Medicaid agreement, and in that Medicaid agreement, it talks about, you know, billing for services you provide, making sure you're submitting correct billing. So you've signed attestation, so you cannot claim that you didn't know if you happen to be caught up in a case. And then follow up. Make sure that if you have a situation where your billing needs to be corrected because of something that was identified, make sure you follow up to make sure it was done. That billing came out, the other billing went in, or you followed up with the county board, like you brought your documentation in and they said, oh no, you're not doing this right, and you've corrected it. Make sure that you go back and you say, okay, is this right now? Am I doing this right? Am I understanding how to bill, you know, correctly for different ratios? Am I billing this correctly? You need to do that follow-up. Nobody is going to come and find you and seek you out from the county board to follow up with you. You need to do the follow-up. The county boards are super busy, just like you're super busy, but you're going to have to make time for that. Okay, so earlier I said we're going to get to some other things, and here's some additional examples which would constitute fraud. So when county boards are doing audits, a lot of county boards have audits that are set up to pick up on anything like an independent provider billing 96 units. That's a big red flag. It'll automatically spit out an audit on an independent provider billing 96 units of one-on-one on any given day. That means that person's had no sleep. Okay, so that's a big red flag. Combining on-site, on-call, and HPC that exceeds 24 hours. That's another thing. If county boards are doing random audits, that their system will automatically red flag. So that's why I'm saying you need to pay attention to those billing. You know, if you're an independent provider and you had a reason, an emergency that you had to work one-on-one day and night for that long a time, it's one day. But you make sure you notify the county board so that they know. Don't just assume that, you know, well, the county board will know that this was an emergency. No, not necessarily. Make sure you call them and tell them. Exceeding 24 hours, that's a no-brainer. You can't bill more than 24 hours in a day. Here's this rounded mileage that we talked about earlier. If you are allotted miles in the individual's ISP, this right here, we have had so many fraud referrals on during COVID, it is not even funny. And I'm just being honest with you, because transportation providers or HPC providers who were providing transportation, they might've been doing non-medical during the beginning of COVID, you know, and then they had to shut down. So they weren't getting those non-medical transportation miles paid. All of a sudden, you know, Johnny, who lives, you know, 2.7 miles from Kroger, was, you know, it was just right up the street. Now, when we get mileage for Johnny, it's showing that there's 35 miles to go take him shopping. You can't be doing that. You can't round up miles. If it's 2.7 miles, it's 2.7 miles. You know, so you need to be really careful about mileage. You can't be rounding up. You can't just do a free for all. That wherever that person went needs to be listed, and it needs to be actual miles. Okay. So this is a big one. And I'm telling you that fraud, the Attorney General's office has taken cases for this rounding mileage. Billing one-to-one when authorized to work with multiple people simultaneously. Like I said earlier, if you have more than one person, you are not one-to-one ratio anymore. And if you don't understand how to bill the other ratios, then you need to be reaching out to the county board. Okay. We have this happen a lot when it's family. There's multiple individuals receiving services in one family. We see it a lot with twins. And then the billing comes in and it's 1-to-1 for each twin. Nope, that's not how that works. And then I'm gonna talk very little about EVV. Please don't ask me tons of questions because we're not fully transitioned to the EVV system yet. I know enough to be dangerous. I listen to cases being presented with state plan, so I am very familiar with what they look at in the EVV system. But if any of you, any of the providers in Fairfield County have been transitioned over to using the EVV system, one of the things that they look at and will red flag the system is if you have a lot of overrides. And what that means is, you know, the EVV system is intended for you not to be able to clock in to start providing services until you're actually with that individual. And then you have to end services at the time that you actually ended services. It's supposed to help not have all these gaps and not allow people to bill for services they didn't actually provide. I have my own reservations about that because I think, you know, there's a lot that could be said about that system. But anyways, we'll go with it. But when you're constantly getting in there and doing overrides, meaning you didn't clock in and you didn't clock out, so you have to do it manually, or you're getting over there and doing an override because you forgot to clock out or forgot to clock in, whatever the case is, eventually it's going to send a red flag in the system. And so we are not looking at EVV yet, but I know the people that are using EVV in our system, it's being monitored by the Department of Medicaid right now. And so if anything flags them, they would let us know. So we're not looking at it physically. I don't know about the county boards who are using EVV, if they've developed a system of monitoring and auditing the EVV system. Don't know about that. But I'm just giving you forewarning that a lot of those overrides or manual entering will send up a red flag. So why referring fraud cases to the AGO is so important. So in most instances, a fraud case cannot be claimed if the provider fixes an error. So there has to be that intent first that we talked about earlier. We have to prove that you intentionally did it, or the AG's office has to prove that. The second thing is there actually has to be a loss. There has to be a loss to Medicaid money. If the provider fixes it, there's no loss. So they might have the intent, but they don't have the loss. So then they would have to close the case. So that is why we don't want the billing to be fixed, which is why you have to make the referral. The second thing is the risk of harm versus the credible allegation of fraud. So risk of harm means that a provider is doing something that intentionally risks the harm of the individual. Not providing services to an individual that they're entitled to. Some people think that that is fraud because they've been assessed to need it. They're not doing, the provider agreed to do it. They have, you know, the contract to do it, but they're not doing it. So they think that's fraud. But what's actually fraud is the credible allegation of fraud. So it's that credible, it's the intent and the loss. Okay, I just wanted to be clear of that. So we're talking about two different things. You might have the risk of harm, which you might have an MUI for, and we might have a real issue with the provider for, but it doesn't really equate to fraud. The credible allegation of fraud is the intent in the loss. Okay. So the referral process, I wanted all the providers to know what happens, like what happens when a county board makes a referral. So we have the submission from them, from the county boards, that come on an ODM referral form. And I keep saying the county boards, but let me preface that statement by saying during a compliance review, there may be something that the reviewer sees that causes suspicion. And, they might be talking to an individual and the individual might say, yeah, my provider is supposed to come here for 4 hours on a Saturday, but she never shows up. So that that reviewer might go, and go back and look at the billing and see, oh, well, this provider billed for Saturdays. But we have the individual telling us that the provider never shows up on a Saturday. Our reviewers will submit a fraud referral for that, just so you know. Doesn't always come from the county board. So we do have a referral form that is filled out, and those are sent to me because they get vetted through DODD before they go over to the Medicaid committee. Those referral forms usually have all of that supporting documentation that we talked about earlier. The TCM notes, the text messages, the calendars, the billing report. It has all of that information to say why this is a potential fraud case. And then we have the content, and it's the reason why they're making the referral. So there's usually a summary that's included, who contacted who report, et cetera, so that the AG's office has all that information. And the supporting documentation, which we've touched on numerous times, billing reports, documentation, emails, calendars, TCM notes, the ISPs, all of this stuff is considered part of that package. We 99.9% of the time need these supporting documents for the Attorney General's office to accept the case. They normally will not accept it if we just give them a fraud referral form, because they need to actually look at something to see why something looks like fraud. So we've had a couple of cases where there were no supporting documents and they did take the case and we did get a conviction, but they're very few and far between. So the submission to us, they submit those referrals, whoever is making the referral, whether it's our reviewers or a field reviewer or a county board, they submit them to me. I review them. Once I'm sure that the form has been completely filled out, has all the information in it, I refer those over to the Department of Medicaid. The Department of Medicaid has a committee that vets them at the Department of Medicaid to make sure that the referral has the intent in it and that there's a loss. And then once they say, yep, it does, then they approve it to go to the Attorney General's meeting. So on those referral forms, and this is where I talk to those people at the county board who are responsible for it, you need to make sure that those fraud referral forms are complete. Medicaid numbers for individuals. We need the we need the Medicaid number for the provider. DODD numbers are meaningless to the AG's office. Those only mean something to DODD, not the Attorney General's office, which is why they need the Medicaid number. And then lastly, that supporting documentation again. So the follow-up, once it goes, I attend a committee meeting every 2 weeks with the Attorney General. We present cases. It's a 2-hour meeting. We present our cases directly to 2 supervisors from the Attorney General's office, and they make a decision whether they're going to take the case or not. If they don't take the case, we send it back to the referring entity and say the case was declined, and then we allow the county boards to do whatever they need to do to recoup the money that was lost. And that may include directing the providers to correct the billing or whatever the county boards do to recoup money. But if the case is accepted, then it goes over to their active cases. So I will get a notice that, I'm told at that committee meeting that the case was accepted. Usually about a week after that case is accepted, it goes active, which means it's assigned to an agent and there's an active investigation. Once there's an active investigation, we don't get any follow-up. It's just like a criminal, it is a criminal investigation, but it's just like dealing with the police. You can't call a police department and say, oh, where are you at with this case? Are you going to be charging this person? They're not going to give you information like that, because they're not going to leak out information because it's an active investigation. So please understand, even you as a provider, at some point during the process, you're going to know you're under investigation, because that investigative agent is going to show up at your door, either at your house, or if you're an agency, at your agency office, and you will know that you're under investigation. But as I said before, calling the county board and asking them questions is going to do you no good, because they're not going to know anything. And then calling the state, calling DODD, again, is not going to do anything, because we don't get updates from them. They do not tell us anything. We know nothing until a provider is indicted. Once they're indicted, once a provider gets an indictment, what happens is you will no longer be able to provide services to individuals. That indictment triggers a Department of Medicaid suspension. The suspension means, it does not mean the same thing it means for DODD. Our DODD suspensions allows you to continue services. A Department of Medicaid suspension means services are terminated immediately. You will be shut off in MITs. You will not be permitted to bill. Even if you have billing that you haven't submitted yet, you can't submit it. You will essentially be frozen, no billing, no services, nothing, until the case is resolved. And with that indictment, you will be placed on the Ohio Medicaid exclusions list. Independent providers might not know what that is, so I explain that. Agencies do know what it is, because it is part of the 7 registry checks that we now require for all providers, the Ohio Medicaid exclusions list. You can only be put on the Ohio Medicaid exclusions list if you are indicted for Medicaid fraud in the state of Ohio. So if you see somebody on there, they've been indicted for Medicaid fraud. That's how you end up on there. Once you have a conviction, if a provider is convicted of Medicaid fraud, within about 6 to 8 weeks, they will move from the Ohio Medicaid exclusions list to the federal Medicaid exclusions list, which means they cannot provide services anywhere in the United States where Medicaid reimbursement is happening. You will be prevented. And that is working in a hospital, working for a nursing home, direct care, any of that stuff. Any place that does Medicaid reimbursement, they're not able to work in. Okay, so that is the entire presentation. I think I've covered everything. I don't think I missed anything, but if anybody else has any questions, feel free to ask.
I don't really have questions, but the meeting was very informative. I just wanted to give a brief case that I've experienced myself recently. And it was definitely in question. So the way I bill for one of my consumers, I work for her 8 hours, but I only can bill in 4-hour increments, meaning, I work 4 hours, I clock out for an hour, and then I have to clock back in. Oh God, I apologize. And then I have to clock back in. Well, on a Pacific date, August 7th was in question because I billed on August 7th, 4 hours. But when I clocked back in that second time, instead of putting 8/7/21, the second time I put 7/7/21, which was an accident. And I had the documentation to support it. And I use DICER for my billing. And so I was able to show that it was just a typing error and it was easily resolved. But like you said, different little things can raise an eyebrow. And the fact that I did have that documentation and everything to match, but something that small, was able to be detected in the system.
Yeah, and it's good that you got it resolved quickly. And a lot of times, that kind of scenario is something that happens, and it's purely an error.
And in my
literally
case, it was weird because I'm thinking, I know I haven't overbilled. Well, it raised an eyebrow because they're thinking you left early this day is what it boiled down to. And I'm thinking, I haven't left early. And so it made me kind of investigate my own stuff. And when I went into my billing, I can see that I turn into DiServe because I do it on the computer. I immediately went to August 7th because that was the date in question and seen, this is where the problem came in at. The second 4 hours, I put 7-7 instead of 8-7. So I had my daily documentation to support the correct hours, but DiServe, my computer login, is where we were able to discover the error. But what raised the eyebrow because they were like, well, what happened to that consumer for that other 4 hours? So it wasn't the money. You did a good thing if you really didn't work and you didn't claim those hours. But then the issue was who worked with that consumer for that 4 hours, or the service coordinator didn't know. She didn't know because I didn't report it, because I was really there, but it was a typing error. So,
well, good for you. I'm glad that that was taken care of relatively easy, but now, I mean, you learned from that, and now you're like, okay, I got to be really careful about not putting in. Yeah. So good for you. Tracy, I see you have a question up here. Can you tell me how you're doing your database checks?
I actually can't tell you that because we have HR people that do that. I'd have to jump over to the office and ask her. Like they run all the background checks and stuff in that office over there. Like, is there a specific list? What come up on like the background checks?
So if you're using the database that checks all 7 at once, it's already checking for that name and you don't have to worry about it. But if you're running the database checks individually, then you would need to jump on the Ohio Department of Medicaid. You could just type in Google Ohio Department of Medicaid exclusion list, and it'll pop up a link right to it. And it is a spreadsheet. It's an Excel spreadsheet. They keep telling us that they're going to be developing a database for Ohio Medicaid exclusion, but I think the new front door project for Medicaid has kind of taken a precedence over that. So it's not been developed yet. But what you do is you use that spreadsheet to look for the names of the potential staff. And all you would need to do is print off the page where their name would be, and then just sign in data and put it in their personnel file.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. What's the one-stop database to check all 7? I kept saying the database because I cannot pull it out of the top of my head. I'm having one of those days. The agency providers that are on the phone, what is the database?
It's ARC.
ARC. Thank you. I knew it started with an A.
Yeah, and actually, I have a question about that. We, as an agency, we're doing the individual checks, and we've always had an issue trying to get set up with that ARC system.
Well, you're going to have to work with the Department of Medicaid. I believe is the one that has the ARC system.
Okay.
But you're going to have to work with them to try to get it set up.
Okay.
We have nothing to do with it, and we always refer everybody back. I know that there are a ton of providers in Ohio that use it. It is a one-stop shop. It really makes things so easy to run. You put the name, date of birth, social security number, identifying information in once, and it runs all your checks. If they're in there, you don't have to do them every 5 years. So it just makes it so nice to have that system. So whatever you have to do, I know that they have on the ARC's website, they have a helpline or a help. I think it's an email. I think I remember hearing that they don't really talk to anybody. They fix problems via email. So if you haven't done that, try that.
Okay, I sure will. Thank you so much.
Sure. And Kimberly, I hope it answers your question. It's the ARC system.
I had something
Yes,
that
thank
I
you.
kind of wanted.
Sure, go ahead, Hunter.
When I asked about the rounded mileage earlier, there was a scenario that kind of popped into my head a few years back. There was a consumer who attended the center here, and we were having our weekly team meetings, and he was getting frustrated because his dad lived in Columbus, and he was here in Fairfield County, and he wasn't able to be transported to his dad's because the team was saying, well, you've already reached your mileage for the month, and he started saying, well, the staff are going here and there and here and there for personal reasons, and they were billing for that. So that kind of stuff directly affects the consumer too, which is hard to watch. So that's why
And that potentially could be fraud.
Right.
And those kind of things, if you're an agency provider, you need to make the team aware of it, the county board, and they should consider, okay, was it really for staff personal use? I mean, that would be the first thing that they're not really investigating the fraud, but they're just trying to determine, did it actually happen? Are staff doing that? But just trying to gather some additional information. And if it's more likely than not that that's happening, then a fraud referral should be made for that case. Because, individuals have budgets. They have to stay within their budgets. So, any other questions? I have my contact phone number and email address if you need any further information. I know they said at the beginning of the presentation that they're going to be sending out information or have it up on the website, whatever. They have a copy of my presentation here, so you can feel free to go back and reference anything I've presented. But also feel free to reach out to me or send me an email with any additional questions if you think of anything in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Do you mind sending that over to Jamie, your presentation?
I did earlier today.
Oh, perfect. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you, Teresa.
You're welcome.
Lots of good information this morning. In the essence of time, I think we should probably just kind of keep plowing. If you're like me, you're kind of wishing you had some more coffee at the moment, but I promise I won't talk too long. But we've been, as a county board, we've really been trying to get our heads wrapped around all of the new training requirements for agency and independent providers. Hopefully you've gotten some emails from DODD saying that, these things are changing. The rule went into effect with the training requirements as of January 1. And so we've kind of put together a compilation. Hopefully this will help you as you go through this navigation process and you're thinking about your training for the year. Provider team, please jump in at any point. I am pretending that I'm Pam today. So I should have really short blonde hair. I think she's on a plane right now, so maybe we can send her our good wishes. But let me pull my PowerPoint up. So, and I did kind of, for those of you who aren't viewing this, we are going to send this out, but I put some links in here. I don't typically like to put links on screens because I know that they're not always pretty, but I wanted you to have those. When we met with the state, they reiterated going back to the rule and going back to the rule and going back to the rule. They really didn't want us to, any of us, to kind of create too many things that deviated from it, so that if it changed or if we just wanted to make sure that those interpretations were correct. So I'll go ahead and bring this up and we will get started. Sorry, I just want to make sure I share the right thing here. Are you seeing the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect. Sorry, so I have too many screens going at once. So as you know, we've always, as providers, we've always had annual training requirements, and in a lot of ways, they weren't always real specific, or they were real specific. We had to do this, 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 and this. We had to have X number of hours. We submitted it when it was time to renew. We had that documentation if it was time for a review, and we were good to go. With the new provider rules, they have delved into this topic a little bit more. And so they've broken it down a little bit differently. And so I just want to walk you through some of the changes that they've made today. First off, they've broken it down very specifically on if you're an independent provider, if you're an agency provider, and what services you are providing. And so I've included the rule and the appendixes. I would encourage you to take some time and go and read those. Figure out what appendix do you fall under, what rule do you fall under, so that you can have that as a reference as you go through your training. Because and Kristen and Jamie, you can jump in. I felt like when we spoke with the compliance folks and everyone, they really wanted to empower you to take charge of this. They want to make sure that you can kind of understand why you did what training and how you're improving your services and how you're improving that learning. So definitely become familiar with your rule. I've tried to summarize the best I can today to make it kind of make sense, but please, 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 your license is on the line here. So please make sure that you go and that you understand it, not just the way I spoke about it or the way Kristen or Jamie or whoever speaks about it, but make sure that you get it too. So training part 1, part of your annual training is going to be done on My Learning. They've mapped it entirely out for you. And so it's 2 hours of training, department provided, and it's going to include all of these A through C. It's just going to be one of those trainings where find a good afternoon or a snowy afternoon and hop on your computer and take it. It's not, you can stop and start. So you can log in and take 20 minutes and then stop and pick up where you left. You cannot fast forward through it. You cannot pick up and just do one part. So, just keep that in mind when you're taking that training. Technology is great when it works. It doesn't always work. So if you're trying to do this the last day before you need to be done, I would encourage you to do it sooner, because whenever we expect it to work is when it's not going to. For independent providers, they actually have it detailed out for your annual training, if you're agency provider or if you're independent provider. So if you're an agency and you're going to send your staff person just onto My Learning and tell them to go, make sure you let them know they need to click that agency. If you're independent, make sure you read those boxes and click independent, because MUI and rights is going to be in that 2 hours for you as an independent provider. It is not as an agency provider. And they're on your transcript, it's going to print out all those topics that you took. And so just be cautious and take time and read the boxes so that you can do that. If you haven't been on My Learning, they have tried to make that login process a little simpler. Probably most of you have been on it at some point. I know you have to get on it even for initial training. And so hopefully this part isn't difficult, but we do have some screenshots that we can walk you through if you need to. So I did go ahead and take a picture. If you logged into My Learning, this is kind of what you're going to see. And so I've tried to highlight, DSP of waiver services annual. That's going to be your agency provider, independent provider annual. Just their verbiage is a little funky. So just make sure that, and when you click on these, I didn't make this live, but if you click on it, it does give like a disclaimer at the top that says, if you're this is the training for you. Make sure you read that, because I would hate for you to take your time and take a course and then it not count for what you need it to count for. Any questions about this 2-hour portion? Fairfield DD staff, did I forget anything in this piece? All right, moving on then. Training part 2, they've broken it down. If you remember, you used to have those required annual topics that you could kind of cover. You know, it could be 20 minutes, it could be a half hour, it could be an hour, and you had all those different things that you were supposed to hit. They've kind of given you more leeway, which should make this more fun. It should make some of these trainings be more interesting and relevant to what you're doing. But so they need you to have 6 hours of training in addition to the required 2 hours that you're going to do through My Learning. How you get that 6 hours is much broader. And we're going to talk about all of that piece. But so every year you're going to need to have some kind of documentation that you have those 8 hours. So it's still 8 hours, but how you get those is going to be a little bit different. So the verbiage from the rule is relevant to services provided and people served. So if you think about the things that you bill for and those outcomes of the individuals that you're working with, anything that relates to what they do, what you do with them, could count as part of this 6 hours. For agency providers, your MUI and health and welfare alerts is going to count as part of this training. So it's not in those 2 hours. So as an agency, you're responsible for doing that. And you would probably already be doing that because you're looking at trends and patterns, you're looking at your UI logs, you're doing all of that kind of stuff for prevention, but make sure you're documenting that as part of those hours. If you're like me, this kind of makes me anxious. I am a checkbox person sometimes. I want you to tell me what you want me to do, and then I will go and do it. There isn't a good list. You cannot just go on to My Learning and take the hours that are there and get your 6 hours anymore. There aren't even 6 hours there. But if you're billing HPC and you take a training on transportation, that a reviewer is going to say, how is this relevant to what you're providing services for? And so even as the county board, we are going to continue to offer provider meetings and we're going to continue to offer trainings, but you're going to have to kind of assess if that training is relevant to what you're providing and what you're billing. Does that make sense so far? It is going to be kind of open to lots of options though. Interpersonal relationships and trust, cultural competency, anything that relates to quality of care, empathy-based, trauma-informed care, individual service plans. We're going to have a new ISP. So if you're learning about how to implement that new Ohio ISP, that could count as a part of your 6 hours of training. Health and safety kinds of things. So maybe you're working with somebody who has dementia. I know that we had dementia staff come and speak to us at a provider meeting in the past. If you're working with a group that has that, this is absolutely a great topic for you. But if you're working with kids, dementia training is not going to be relevant to what you're providing. And so that's not going to count in those 6 hours. Positive behavioral supports, creating positive cultures, general requirements for intervention and behavioral support strategies. If you have a training with Dean to understand how an individual reacts to different environments based on their trauma, that's going to be an example of something that you can utilize as your annual training. It really is about learning. It's not just about checking the boxes of what you got trained on this year. And we really want to focus on the services and supports that you're providing. So I wonder if we could get an example, maybe if somebody has one, maybe you've been reviewing ISPs lately, of an outcome of maybe somebody that you support. And then we can kind of brainstorm as a team here some different trainings that could be relevant to what that outcome is. So that when you walk away today, you kind of have an idea of how we can do this. Anybody got a sample outcome? It doesn't have to be like word for word.
We have some vacation outcomes.
Okay. So if I think about what kinds of skills somebody might need to be able to make that outcome or achieve that outcome, what are some kinds of things that I might need to help them do? What are some things that I could learn to help that individual reach that outcome and become more independent? Maybe we need budgeting skills. Maybe we need time management skills. Maybe we need work skills so that they can, start to save money to reach that vacation outcome. There's so many different, maybe it's helping them with community stuff so that they can go and learn about different places so they know where they want to go. Maybe it's utilizing a community resource to do that. Maybe we go and we learn from reference librarians about how to utilize some of the resources at the library to learn where you want to go on vacation. Any kind of webinar, any kind of YouTube video. Now, obviously you're going to check it and make sure it's legit, but if you're going to use that to help that individual reach that outcome and become more independent to keep living their life, that's going to count in this 6 hours.
So Ian, let me ask you, how would you document that? If, let's just say it's a YouTube.
It's on my next slide.
I'm
Do you have
sorry.
questions about the topic before we go to documentation? He's on it. It's where my brain went to. I can see, go ahead, Kyle, sorry.
I saw in the chat, Amy had put in there maybe a goal of increasing community involvement, which is a great one. And again, there's so many different things that are opportunities for you to learn. I just know one of the things, I had a conversation with the staff person that says, I don't know how to help this person attend like a marathon. And we looked around and we saw there's certain different marathons that have this person wanted to run. Well, they have, I can't remember what they're called, but they're like runners that run alongside of someone if they can't do it themselves. So, I didn't know, but I just Googled it. We come up with something. So I think there's anything like that is just an opportunity for you to really get out there. And again, one of the things I'm going to always stress too is if you're trying to figure out some training for a person that you're supporting, have them help you find it. What's more important? What's better for them, kind of increasing their independence. All right, I've talked enough.
Oh no, it's all good stuff. And I can't see the chat right now. So if there's other things, just let me know. So documenting this as an agency provider, you already kind of had to have some kind of training plan. And so I would just put this in there as how you're documenting it. But things that you're going to want to include, so they can be everything from a TED Talk to a community training. If Parks and Rec are doing a presentation about all of the different resources that they have coming up this year, and you're looking at a goal of community integration, that's great. I'm not going to get a certificate of training for that. And so you want to make sure as an independent provider or as an agency provider. And when we say this, I want you to think about that you're going to have to upload this into the state's site at the end goal here. So maybe the spiral notebook is not the best bet because it's hard to scan. The copier doesn't like that stuff on the edge. I'm a paper person, can you tell? So documentation needs to include the mode. So is it virtual? Was it face-to-face? Was it a video? Date, length, presenter name, topic, and then a brief description. Because you want to eliminate any question about why that training works for what you're trying to do. If you're like me, we want to absorb that training, but I can't necessarily tell you exactly which one I went to last Thursday. Having that documented ahead of time, even if it's just a sentence or some bullets, most presenters anymore are going to put something up there on the screen as what their outcomes are going to be. Or you saw a flyer and they gave you the 2 sentences that it was about. Go ahead and stick that in there so that anytime you do have to submit that information, you're already ready to go. But we're gonna talk about this here in a minute, but I'm gonna say it now too. You cannot, in the way that the state has set this up and the kinds of trainings that you want to do to actually improve your quality of service and improve those individuals that you're working with and reach those outcomes, you cannot wait until the day before everything has to be due. It's really, really hard You know, it's not like you can just go to DODD and tell somebody to hop on there and take all 12 trainings and be done, because it's not there anymore. We don't get the feeling it's going to be there very soon. They're making a lot of changes, but it's kind of a mess right now. And so we as a county board really want to just make sure that you're not waiting to do this. So if you struggle with technology, I would encourage you to find somebody that can help you, whether that is a family member. The Fairfield County District Library and Pickerington both have library staff who will help you navigate that. Whatever you need to do, start thinking through, you know, okay, maybe you don't want to do that today with COVID numbers being exactly where they are, but, you know, don't wait until, if you're up in July, don't wait until the end of June to start thinking about this. Agency providers, you probably are doing some of this training already. You just want to document it in that format. We are here to help though. Some things that we're going to do, we are going to continue to offer all kinds of trainings throughout the year, but you're going to need to kind of evaluate, is this pertinent to what I'm doing? If you want to come anyway, we would love to have you. I am a firm believer that understanding more about lots of different things makes us be better even in what we're doing. However, it's not going to be able to be submitted for those 6 hours as part of that annual training. Jamie and Kristen and Pam are all still going to be resources. So if you're looking at an outcome and you're trying to figure out what kinds of things can I find, if you're looking for a topic, you haven't touched trauma-informed care and you really want to understand that, they're great resources to help you figure out, what do we have that we can offer you already created? Where can we send you that have some great resources? There are some really cool YouTube videos out there from some of the people who, that's the kind of cool thing. You don't have to go hear that speaker in person anymore. You can actually see and hear from them from the horse's mouth, the people who are doing that research. And then we're to continue to communicate with the department. We sat on this meeting and I have to compliment Kristen. She was so detailed with some questions that some independent providers were having. And I kind of think that they were like, whoa, like I didn't even know. I didn't think about that. Oh, okay. So we are absolutely here to help you. Kristen, Jamie, and Pam, and Kyle and Leslie, I don't, she's not on my screen, but they have great resources at the state that they can reach out and say, hey, X person, if this got kicked out and the system's saying that they're not going to take this, but by rule, we can see where this all meets. They're going to be able to help you navigate this. And with any great technology rollout, everything's going to break at some point. And so there will be hiccups as we go along the way. So that's the other thing that I would encourage you to do is just don't wait, because if you're like me and you go to sit down and you need to get it done that second, that's when, you can't get something to upload, or, I get really frazzled in that moment. And so then, it makes things a little bit more difficult for me. But we really are here to help. And then at the end, we do have Pam and Kristen. I know that for training purposes, these are going to kind of be your two best resources, but please, if you can't reach them or you want to talk to somebody else, or you need the second opinion because somebody says it differently so it sinks in, please, please, please let us know. We've tried to simplify this without taking too much out, but it really is important things. And so especially if you are used to doing the old way, the state really wanted to kind of change it up. And I think it's good. I think that we're going to hopefully be able to, in Fairfield County, focus on learning more than just checking those boxes. I am going to kind of change the way we do our provider certificates, even from provider meetings as well. I'm going to break out some of those topics and times so that if you want to come to the whole meeting, but maybe only 1 hour of that you're going to use to submit, you'll be able to use that to be able to clearly document that a little bit differently as well. So questions? I'm sure there's at least one out there somewhere. I don't believe I answered things that well. Fairfield DD folks, did I forget anything? I tried to channel my inner Pam.
I don't really have a question, but I'm glad we touched on the topic of just knowing what courses to take, because I just was up for compliance. And I was so confused because it's been a while. Thank God for Maggie Hart. I don't know if anyone's familiar with her, but she's just like God sent on Johnstown Road. She knows everything about DODD. And so I was like, all these classes, do we have to take all of these now? Because there was a big list. And she kind of went over like, no, you take what's applicable to you or your consumer. So that definitely helped me out on what classes to accumulate my 6 hours from. So I definitely appreciate the feedback on that, because I thought I needed to take all of that stuff. Like, oh my gosh, we need to take all of this now. So I would have been taking stuff that wasn't even in reference to myself or my consumers.
Right. And we don't want to get you to the end and then you be short hours, even though you took 30 hours of training if it's not relevant.
Right.
And with everything changing on January 1, if you get a month or 2 months in and say, I just don't remember all the things, don't hesitate to reach out to Ann or Pam or Jamie or Kristen or Leslie, because it's a lot. And I mean, the rules changed day one, right? January 1st, everything changed, flipped a switch. And so it's weird. So don't, if you know it all now, I'm impressed, because I still can't wrap my hands around it all. It's too much, I think. But again, I think in a month or two, I know hopefully we'll experience some questions from different providers and be able to have a little bit more insight about it. I want to give Ann and Kristen and Jamie and Pam and Leslie all the credit in the world, because we basically had to twist the department's arm to get together to meet with us, and they did. And I don't think they made it a whole lot clearer, but you guys did it, and I appreciate all the work you did with those guys. But don't ever hesitate to use this as a resource, because this is so important, because we know it's you keep on providing services or you don't, and we want to be there to help you make sure you get all the things you need to.
I think we had a question about the my learning, the new one. For the initial training or the 8-hour training, it's a PowerPoint. Like if you watch, it doesn't have like someplace to get a certificate. So we were just kind of wondering how you got credit for that and how we could share that with the whole facility and then them get.
And correct me if I'm wrong, county board staff, but I believe the way they've said it in there is that you can either sit and watch it. There is a class that you can take that has like all the steps to advance it, or you can present that PowerPoint, but you have to include all their pieces. So like we debated, like, do we host people and we just flip through all those slides? But as an agency, I think you could. And I would document when you started, when you stopped, just and end up creating some kind of certificate or some kind of documentation, just like they would on the transcript. And then have somebody kind of sign off and say, yes, you taught their curriculum.
Thank you.
The compliance review, let's say somebody has one that 3 or whatever this due in March of this year, because everything was changed as of January. Do you have to have all of those new ones implemented into your renewal in the next 2 months for your review?
No, Darlene,
For
they'll be
compliance for 3 years.
they'll be looking at your trainings, Darlene, from 2021. They will not be looking at the new trainings for your compliance review.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? I know you've had a lot of information thrown at you, so please, please, please don't hesitate to take this and kind of let it simmer a little bit and think about it, and how does it fit for you or your agency or your if you're an independent provider, how does it work? Things like MUI and things like that, we are going to continue to offer through the board as well, especially some of those updates. So if you think about some of the things that Jen came in and Lorelai came and talked to at the end of last fall that were more like trends and patterns, that's going to fall into one of those areas where it could be relevant to the individuals that you are working with. And so, just it's kind of in how you explain it, as long as you can explain it, I think is kind of what I've taken from it. You just need to be able to explain that rationale about how it fits. But if there are people that you know, maybe you run into them there, maybe if you're a family member as a provider and there's another family member who might be providing services for their person as well. You know, if you think of somebody that this sounds like really hard for them to do, please let us know. We do want to kind of work with folks. So ISCs, if you're on the call as well, if you think of folks that you're working with that are providing services that, you know, we can help them kind of get ahead of this and not wait until December to figure out their DoD login and do all of that kind of stuff. Any kind of support that we can offer, we want to as well. And with that, I am all finished for the day. Kristen, I think we'll probably take a couple-minute break, and then are we meeting with the 10 today?
Yep. I just wanted to remind everyone that next month on the 23rd, we'll be having, or Lorelei Banks will be on, and she'll be going over MUI. We will take about a 5-minute break, and the meeting for the Excellence Network members will start. If you are a member for 2022, I believe there's 14 of them. If you're a past member and you've not completed your renewal forms, we miss you already, and we'd love to see you next month, but those would have to be submitted in order to attend today's meeting. So it was good to see all of you. We had a lot of faces on today, and it was a great amount of information shared with all of you. So stay safe and healthy, and we'll see all of you hopefully next month. And for the 10 members, we'll start in about 5 minutes.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, Kristen, are you still there?
Yep.
I'm going to switch over to my mobile.
Okay.
All right. Let you
Yep.
know. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Kristen, did we fill that form out?
Yes, you're good. Tara submitted it.
Thank you. I want to.
Can we not participate?
No, we can, Tara. I just asked Tara that.
Okay.
I was gonna say, you got 5 minutes to get it done, Tracy.
I had a quick question. Are we supposed to attend the second half of this?
Only if you're a member of the Excellence Network. So
Okay. No.
yeah, we'll see
No,
you next
not a
month.
member.
Hopefully.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, Christian, this is Kathy Tate. Do you have my, did I show up?
No, Kathy, you did not fill out anything for the Excellence Network.
Oh, no, not for that. I mean, for this meeting, could you see that I was attending?
Oh, yeah. Yep. I got your name down. You'll get that information from Ann. She'll send out your certificate within the next week or so. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Bye.
I know I didn't fill mine out. I got COVID in early December, and I just have not. Yeah, I got behind on everything. So I log off, and I'll talk to you later.
Good to see you, Darlene.
Thanks.
Bye, Darlene.
Good to see you. Bye.
Is everybody good, Kristen?
I'm looking. Yep, I think so. What a good looking group of people.
Damn.
So unfortunately, I hopped on late. Is there a way I can get the PowerPoint that was shared about the training?
I was just about to say the same thing.